thought that the Jews were Ethiopians. But how could they be confused that the Jews were Ethiopians if the Jews were so-called white people? Showing that the real Jews are black. You're going to find out that the so-called white people that call themselves Jews today converted to being Jews around the year 740 AD. And through process of time, as our people went into slavery, they came on the world scene and claimed to be the real Jews. So now everybody thinks that the Jews are so-called white people. But the real Jews are black, according to the Bible and according to history as we're reading now. Let's read on. It says, for many Romans to have taken them, the Jews, for Ethiopians is clear indication of their color, since the Ethiopians were definitely black to the Romans. Let's jump down a little bit. Especially dark were the Jews of Spain and Portugal. So now, back there in the 14, 13, 12, 1100s, he's saying, look, the Jews of Spain and Portugal were very dark. Why? Because as stated before, the real Jews are people of color. When you read the Bible, to be a Jew is not a religion or belief. The Bible tells you to what? The Jews, or the Israelites, the same people, are a nation of people. The same people that came out of Egypt with Moses. All right, it's not a religion, they're a nation. But now today you have so-called white people perpetrating to be Jews, the descendants of those that came out of Egypt with Moses, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But we're reading here in the history that the real Jews, all right, are so-called black. But then these new so-called white Jews came on the scene claiming to be Jews, but they're liars. Let's read on. Especially dark were the Jews of Spain and Portugal. The Portuguese Jews were very dark, says Pritchard, another historian. The Duchess de Ambrantes, wife of Napoleon's ambassador to Portugal, said that the Jew, the Negro, and the Portuguese could be seen in a single person. So showing, it's saying the Jew, the Negro, and the Portuguese could be seen in a single person, showing that what? The real Jews were Negroes. Let's read on. So dark were the Jews, especially of Portugal and southern Spain, that many whites thought all Jews were black or dark. Right? That's what the history says. All right? Let's jump down a little bit more on this page. It says, many of the Jews who were banished from Portugal by John II. Let's jump to page 130. I'll read it again. It says, many of the Jews who were banished from Portugal by George II settled in the West Indies. So now the Jews were banished, right, from the country of Portugal, which is over there near Spain and Europe. It says, many of the Jews who were banished from Portugal by John II settled in the West Indies. John Bigelow, who visited Jamaica, because Jamaica's in the West Indies, in 1850 saw the descendants of these Jews and says they were Negroid. So the history books are telling you straight up that what? The blacks that are in the West Indies and in Jamaica and all these islands are descendants of the real Jews. That's your nationality. Jamaican and African American, all these are all made up titles that were put on our people by their conquerors. But our true nationality is that what? We're the Israelites. Let's get some more out of this book. This is page 12 out of the book, Nature Knows No Color Line, further proving that the real Jews are so-called black people. It says, furthermore, we have no proof that the original 70 Jews who went to Egypt were white. Meaning there's no proof that the real Jews were white. The 70 Jews that went into Egypt, what it's talking about is when you read the book of Exodus in the Bible, the first chapter, it talks about how when the Jews or the Israelites, same people, were a young nation comprised of about 70 people, they traveled into Egypt and settled there for a while. Why? Because there was a famine all over the world and Egypt had food. So he's saying, look, the scholars are saying we don't have any proof that those Jews were white. It says, according to their legends, they originated in Chaldea, and there is considerable evidence the inhabitants of the region in earliest times were Negroid, or Negroes, meaning black. In fact, some writers said the Jews were an African people. So now, why would some writers say the Jews are an African people if they were white? It doesn't make any sense. Showing you the real Jews are black. You so-called American Negroes, West Indians, Haitians, and Hispanics, you are the real Jews. And we're put in a low condition, being punished by God because we broke his biblical laws. That's why, as a nation, we go through all the hell we go through. That's the source of all of our problems. But now it's time to return to the laws that we broke. If we don't return, we're just going to keep catching more hell as a nation. Let's get some more history out of this book. This is page 93. And now this is going to go into Peter, who was one of the apostles of Christ. And he was an Israelite, a Jew. Let's find out what it says about St. Peter. It says, Negroes, some with crowns, also appear in the coats of arms of German and other European cities and provinces. Outing of Bavaria has a black Madonna. This certain place has a black Madonna, meaning what? The Madonna is a picture of Christ and Mary. Christ holding the baby, Mary holding the baby Christ, the baby Jesus. But in Europe, the original paintings were of Christ and Mary as black. Why? Because at one point, they had the true paintings up there. A lot of these images you see today of Jesus is white and Mary is white, a lot of those images were originally, they were painted as being black people. Why? Because that was the truth in the Bible. But around the 14 and 1500s, at the time known as the Renaissance, you had painters and sculptors come along, excuse me, and paint over these pictures or destroy the pictures of Mary and Christ and the disciples as black people and paint new white ones for white supremacy. And I'm going to show you that in history as well. Reading on, it says, Coburg has the Negro St. Maurice, Kasmerberg, which are these are places in Europe, Marquette Fetchen, Austria, a jet black Negro as St. Peter holding the keys of the kingdom. So now it's showing you that when the original art of St. Peter, who was a disciple of Christ, who was a Jew and Israelite, all right, he was painted as a Negro, as black, showing you what? The real Jews are black. But they changed up and falsified the history to make us think that what? The Jews are white. Let's read on. It says, in the text, he is called a Moor. That is German then for Negro. So you had, the history books are telling you that the disciples were called Negroes. Check that out. And our people are taught that their history begins with Africa, and that you're African. You're not Africans. You're the real Jews that the Bible speaks of. Let's get a picture of what it's speaking about. Here's a picture right here that you're seeing on the screen now. St. Peter painted as a Negro, black. The original painting. Let's get the caption. Arms of Aragon, Spain. Center right, arms of Kammersburg, Austria. St. Peter, foremost saint and founder of the Catholic Church, is shown as a jet black Negro. It says founder of the Catholic Church. Why? Because Peter was told by Christ that Christ was going to build the church up on Peter. But so when you go into the first popes, the first rulers of the church, the first Christians were so-called blacks when you go into the history, right? They were Jews, Israelites. But what you had through process of time, through the Renaissance, so-called whites began to rise to power, and you see the white popes you had today. But this is our people's history. You have a great history. You have a great history. Let's get page 169. We already read about the Black Madonna, which is a picture of Christ and Mary, baby Jesus and Mary. But now, let's read some more on it. This is page 169. Another belief is that the black dolls are symbolic of the Black Virgin Mary, showing you that what? When they had dolls in the past of Mary and paintings, they were originally painted black. Why? Because that was the truth. From the time of Christ, everyone knew that the real Jews were black, the real Israelites were black. But then as time progressed, especially during the time of the Renaissance, the 14 and 1500s, they changed the paintings and the pictures. So we think that all the people that are in the Bible are white, that we think the Jews are white. And a lot of this was done for what? White supremacy. Let's move on. Let's read on. It says the earliest Madonnas, meaning the picture of Mary, the mother of Christ, right, of Britain,